When asked about quarterback Garrett Greene on his Monday presser, Neal Brown was very uncommittal about the future of the quarterback. Is he hiding something? Could he be out way longer than we think? Let's talk about that. This is Locked On West Virginia.
You are Locked On West Virginia, your daily podcast on the West Virginia Mountaineers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, guys? Welcome in. My name is Mountaineer Paul. This is another edition of Locked On West Virginia. Thank you guys so much for being here today. This episode is brought to you by Game Time, of course. Download the app, guys, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. And thank you for making Locked On West Virginia your first listen every single day, and for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we talk about your team every single day. Man, it's been interesting here the last week or so in Mountaineer land. Obviously, defensive coordinator Jordan Leslie is out. And there's a lot of other news going on right now. Obviously, Mr. Coons replaces him. We're going to talk about on today's show Garrett Greene first. We're going to talk about this situation surrounding him. Why the quiet, sneaky kind of thing? There's a couple explanations I think you can give for this, but I've heard some rumors, so we're going to talk about that. And then defensive coordinator candidates, dream candidates, right? These are candidates that I would be like, holy crap, we got him. So these are probably in the not likely section, but possible. And we'll also do some realistic ones as well. And then we'll just wrap that all up in the third segment. To start, let's start with an article from Skylar Callahan at West Virginia Mountaineers. He says, WV quarterback Garrett Greene still struggling with an upper body injury, which I have been able to confirm independently. I'm pretty sure it's a concussion. Nobody has put that out yet, but I have spoken to several people that say it's a concussion inside the program. So we'll see. And maybe they won't admit that. Maybe they don't have to admit that, but those are the details. West Virginia quarterback Garrett Greene is among several Mountaineers who are trying to get back onto the field after suffering an injury the past couple of weeks. Greene missed the Arizona game with an upper body injury and looked really beat up in the Kansas State game. On Monday, head coach Neal Brown provided an update on Greene's status, along with many other banged-up Mountaineers. Garrett Greene is still struggling a little bit. Wyatt Milam is making progress. He'll be available. He'll practice this week. Aubrey Burks, I don't know. I don't have any updates on him. Aiden Garnes, I would say he's out at this point. I'll know more by next Monday, but I wouldn't say he's still out. But I would say he's still out. KK Tarnu, I think he's touch and go. A lot of it will depend on how he heals this week. CJ Donaldson, we'll see how he does this week too. Greene has struggled in the team's two losses against Iowa State, Kansas State, combining to go 27 of 50, 291 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 4 picks. For whatever reason, Greene just hasn't looked the same quarterback that he was a year ago, despite the coaching staff raving about his increased precision throwing the football during the season. Neal Brown declined to name a starting quarterback for the Cincinnati game next week, as he wants to wait for Greene to get healthy before doing so. If the Mountaineers had a game this week, it would be very unlikely that Greene would be able to go. This bye week does buy him some extra time to get right and return to practice, possibly give him a chance to start or appear versus the Bobcats. This is it for Greene, so you know he's going to do everything he can to get back on the field. There's no medical red shirt, and even if there was, he wouldn't be eligible for having one after already appearing in 7 games, meaning this is his final year of eligibility. And unless he makes a position switch or plays professionally in another league, such as the UC or AFL, this could be Greene's last few games as a football player. It may not happen for Cincinnati, but it's hard to doubt the kid that displays so much toughness that we've seen the last of him as a Mountaineer uniform. That being said, if his injury is serious, that's putting his health first, should be prioritized. Nico Markell showcased last week against Arizona that he's more than capable of winning games. So if Greene remains out, it's not like the Mountaineers are in a world of hurt. Good article there by Skylar Callahan, and I just want to touch on a couple things, and I should have wrote it down so I had bullet points. But so to address the first thing, there's a couple reasons for why Neal Brown's playing this quiet, right? I think number one, let's say they did think that Garrett was going to be able to play. Well, why would you give Cincinnati any information? Make them prepare for two quarterbacks. That's the old rule. It's what everybody does, and it does take time away from, because you've got to defend a quarterback that goes left versus one that goes right. Those are two completely different calls on defense, right? Especially if they roll one way or the other. So you make them do it. It's just, you're always going to make it harder on your opponent. That's number one. Number two is it's a serious injury, and that's what I'm leaning towards right now. I was told that it's a concussion. We'll see. And listen, guys, I've been told by people that would know, but they could still come out and deny this. And I don't know. I don't even know if they have to disclose it. They may play it off or play it down. Obviously, they're calling it an upper body injury. If it was a shoulder or an arm, they would say a shoulder or an arm. It's a head injury for the most likely scenario. And like I said, I've been told by people that I trust that it is. And outside of that, I think the possibility that Garrett may not come back at all does exist. If you'll remember, Clint Trickett was a concussed player for West Virginia that had to medically retire. Now, he's not as tough as Garrett Greene, and he played behind a much worse offensive line. Too bad Clint Trickett couldn't have had the offensive line that we have the last couple of years, because they're a great pass protecting group. That said, with Garrett, he's taking a lot of hard shots. You've seen the one against Kansas State on the sideline, but then I was talking to somebody earlier about this, and then I decided, you know what, I'm going to check on this just to see if there's much validity to it. And the word on the street is that the reason Garrett looked like he did in the first few games of the season was because of a concussion sustained during camp. This is not fact. I'm telling you what I've been told by somebody that was there. So I'm just saying, I don't want to present this as fact without checking into it more. This is just something to chew on. I was told that he hurt himself in camp before the Penn State game, which is why he dropped the ball and looked so crazy the first couple games of the year, because he wasn't all the way back yet. And it would explain a lot. He did not look like himself. Yes, Penn State's a really good football team, but I mean, you look at how Garrett Greene has looked in 2-minute situations, in into game scenarios and stuff before this year. He was so good. Diagnosing plays wasn't always his strength, but he hadn't always had to, because he was decisive with the ball. And I just think there was something off about Garrett this year. In that Penn State game, it just looked like he was so overhyped is what I thought. But I think maybe he was trying to come back from another head injury, and I don't have proof, but we'll see. Maybe it comes out someday. I'm told that they played it quiet because they felt like he was able to return. He did. They said that he had some issues earlier in the week before Penn State, and then things got better. Play that for what you will. So if this is another concussion, then you're talking multiple concussions. And you know the old saying with that too, once you got one, it's easier to get more than one. So I think these are all things that are worth talking about. And I won't be surprised if Garrett makes it back, but I also won't be surprised if he doesn't, based on what I'm being told. And then you have to question if any of this is true. And you have to preface it with that, right? I trust the people I talk to. I do. And if I just was one step closer to Garrett with who I was talking to, I would feel much, much better about it. But I just don't want to present something as total fact without actually hearing it from, well, let's just say a coach or a player. Okay. So outside of that, we're going to just say that I've heard some things. I'd have talked to players, and yes, I can pretty much confirm it's a concussion now. But outside of that, I don't want to really go much further, just for my credibility. But I think Garrett is a tough kid. I think he's going to do everything he can to come back. Everything that Skylar said in his article, it really, to me, rings true. I think that, you might have to prevent Garrett from hurting himself even more. So it's one of those things. I don't know what to say other than I think Nico Marchiol is the best for the role now. I really want to. I think Garrett has done an excellent job. And had he not been injured at times this year, which is my biggest critique of him, it's not his play on the field. It has nothing to do with that. It's all about him being able to stay healthy. He's basically, he reminds me a lot of Clint Trickett, really. You think about Clint Trickett, he was pretty good when he was healthy. He really was. Think about that Alabama game and the Chick-fil-A kickoff bowl. He was there and he played well. This is a guy that went to Florida State, started, even though he was thrown in because of injury. Clint Trickett was a pretty good player for the size that he was. And he would start most places. I really had a lot of respect for Clint Trickett. And not that he's an elite player, but he was good enough to play college football and start. I feel similar about Garrett in that when he's healthy, he can really hang in with some of the best players. And when he's not, it cuts him off to the point to where he becomes very below average, unfortunately, because the one edge that he has is this athletic ability. And with concussions, it takes away both because you can't run him as much because of the concussions, and you can't think as well because of the concussion. So unfortunately, you've got a two-way deal here where I feel like with the concussion in Garrett, it's doing more damage than if he just had a high ankle or maybe he was banged up in the knee or something like that. So that's something to chew on as well. Up next on Locked On West Virginia, guys, who are some dream candidates for West Virginia on the defensive coordinator side, and who could they be? I think that bears talking about. Let's talk about it up next. Locked On West Virginia. This episode of Locked On West Virginia is brought to you in part by Game Time. That's right, Game Time. Builters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. Curated deals make it easier to find the best price on seats. You can look at seats before you buy in the app in a panoramic 360-degree view, 360 degrees around. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference when it was part of their lowest price guarantee, which makes it covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Here's how you do it. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but create the account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today and then ask yourself, what game time? What time is it? It's game time. All right, guys, we're back. So I wanted to do a little bit more research on this, but I put together a few names. I was trying to find some big ones, some that would really excite you guys. And, oh man, I can't believe this. No, here it is. I found it again. Sorry about that. I had my notes sitting somewhere. So here's some names I feel like that if we could get would be just holy cow, right? Like, wow, I'd love to have this guy. So number one on my list for defensive coordinator is Jim Leonhard, by the way. This is one of those guys that he is at last check. He was in Illinois. I don't know where he's at this year. Is he a head coach now? I don't know. Is Jim Leonhard a head coach? Let me check into that really quick. I don't think he is he? He was a head coach. Let's see. Let me make sure where he's at now because I actually didn't check into that one. Let's see. It looks like right now he is okay. He's with the Broncos as the defensive backs coach / pass game coordinator. Whoa. That's interesting. I didn't know that. That kind of surprised me. I thought he would still be in college, to be honest. But either way, he would be my number one selection for a defensive coordinator spot. I think he's a dream candidate. I don't think he's 100% legit as far as we would be able to get him. Obviously, he's in the NFL now, so that makes things different and difficult. But I still think, look at what he's done in his career as a coordinator. He's one of the best out there. He's one of those. He had when I was looking it up, his defense has finished top 6 in expected points allowed per play in 4 of his 6 seasons as defensive coordinator, and led the country in 3 of those years. One of the times Wisconsin did not finish the top 6 was in 2022, and it was when he had to be interim head coach. So he wasn't able to be basically all in on the defense alone. So I think that's something that you need to look into when it comes to that one season that he was kind of roughing it out there. But for me, yeah, obviously great hire. There's a couple others that I think would be really good. A lot of people keep mentioning Tony Gibson. I don't think he is a dream hire necessarily, based on how they have played this year. I'm throwing him on the list because I've addressed it once before on here, but I think with Tony, I don't know. This is for next year, by the way, guys. This isn't for this year. With Tony, he's had this really bad season, and I don't think it quantifies him as a coach 100%, because he's been good for a long time. It's just the 3-3-5 that I really don't like. But certainly we could do a lot worse than him as well in a lot of cases. So I do want to point that out. He's a guy that you could make a case for would be a good fit at West Virginia, and a lot of people would love to have him. But I don't know. I just think it's tough for me because I want him to succeed. He's one of us. But at the same time, he's been so bad this year that I just wonder, with the portal and everything, is he adjusting well? Like, there's a lot to that. And I want to make sure that he's still able to do the job the same way he used to be able to. And there's never really any guarantee that a coach doesn't get a little bit worse as their career goes on. He's been doing defensive coordinator for a long time now. Maybe he's getting frustrated that he's not a head coach. So, that's another one that I think is fair to mention, if you want to ask me anyway. Obviously, Air Force has a great coordinator right now in Brian Knorr. And, I mean, look at the talent they have. And that's Knorr, by the way, if you're not familiar with him. Man, does he have those guys playing good football? I mean, seriously, they have been really good this year. You couldn't do much worse than him. So, somebody's asking, we're talking about the new coach we're going to hire. Yeah, I'm just throwing out candidates that we can look at next year if Coons doesn't keep the job. He may. I never said GG was leaving. You didn't listen to the whole episode. There's a question mark on there. It's a debate. It's a discussion. But when it comes to the coordinator thing we're talking about, I think obviously Knorr is a guy that would be really good. My throat's really dry all of a sudden. Whew. 1 sec. Always got to get a dooski in. So, have any of you guys seen Knorr this year, though? He's done such a good job at Air Force, and I would love to have him. I just don't know if he'll leave the job. I think, obviously West Virginia being a step up, no doubt about it. It seems like Neal likes to hire guys he knows. So that's another thing I want to point out when it comes to Neal. Mike Scherer is another one, defensive coordinator for UNLV. He's man, look, he's a turnover margin guy. When you look at the numbers, Mike Scher, he's one, he's one of the youngest guys at the like a major coordinator role. He's definitely up there as one of the youngest. So I think he's an interesting one. He might be 30. He's right around 32, 35, somewhere in there. But I mean, you think about they won a co-championship in 2023 for the first time in a decade. They were fourth in the nation with 17 interceptions. They were 17th in turnover margin, which was a +8. They had at least one turnover in 13 of 14 games. He's a great candidate, and I'm not saying that he's out of touch or not able to be gotten. And you look at his trajectory. He goes from Missouri as a GA to Arkansas as an analyst to Arkansas as the linebackers coach to interim defensive coordinator at Arkansas to the defensive coordinator and linebackers coach at a place like UNLV. So certainly he's in position to possibly get a job offer or maybe even up a level. You never know. Somebody put about Vic Koenig, however you say his last name. I put something on him yesterday just as a joke. I said, how about this? The duo that dominated the Sun Belt Conference, Neal Brown and Vic, dominated the Sun Belt Conference. The likes of LSU and Nebraska cowered in their boots at the thought of a Neal Brown and Vic combo. So, yeah, man, pretty crazy. Obviously, it was a joke, and I was being sarcastic. They wouldn't hire the guy back because of the things that he said, whether you'd agree with it or don't. I'm not saying I agree with it. I don't know what he said to Jackie Matthews. He claims he called him the N-word. So if that's the case, then you can't hire him back. It's, whether he's a good coach or not. So let's just stay off that topic altogether because you can't win in either way. You talk about that. I think I have to talk like that. Somebody's asking, if you're listening on a podcast, somebody's asking a question. Is there an assumption Neal Brown's going to be back next year? I mean, obviously, with these discussions, I can't predict the future. So, yeah, I think – I don't know the answer to the question. So some days I may talk about head coaching candidates for next year. Some days I may talk about defensive coordinator candidates. But yesterday, I think the only way to read into it for me was when you talk about the firing of Jordan Leslie, and let's go to break really quick, and then we'll finish this up. This is Locked On West Virginia. Okay, and we're back. No ad read there today. So back on to the topic we were just discussing. I just don't know. I think that's the major thing here is that nobody really knows what's going to happen yet because this team could win 5 in a row, and it's all. I mean, look, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but those guys in that locker room probably think that way. Maybe we can win 4 or 5 in a row. If we do, that's another 9-win year. You can't fire him on 2 9-win years. You can't fire him on the 9 and an 8. Anything under that, I think you can start having the discussion. So if you want Neal Brown out of here, I guess you need to root for West Virginia to lose. That's just not inside me to do. It's one of those. It's a definite catch-22. I personally feel like moving on from Neal Brown is for the betterment of the program. But at the same time, I can't root against them. So I'm stuck. I'm stuck in the moment. In the moment, they've got games to play. We're in a bye week. So, but yes, this is being made with an assumption that Neal Brown will be back next year, but that's without any working knowledge on the subject. So, when it comes to Neal Brown, I think my biggest thing for now is how good are the teams that you beat at the end of the year? What do they look like when you play them, and how good are they? Well, you look at Cincinnati and Texas Tech are the two you got to look at, and they looked pretty good a couple weeks ago. I think they were both 1 or 2 losses, and now that's not exactly the case, especially like Tech. They've looked really bad lately. Cincinnati's still pretty decent. Baylor's looking better and better. They could really catch on at the end of the year. And you don't want to play Baylor right now, almost all the teams in the league. So I still don't think it's good enough. Obviously, the bowl game could matter. I was dreaming about this earlier today. Is there a way Pitt can lose a couple games at the end of the year and somehow we play them in the North Carolina spot from last year? Where did North Carolina finish last year in the ACC? Let's see, 2023 ACC standings. You guys know where I'm going with this. Here's the one way I'll accept a Neal Brown return next year. Just hang with me for a second. Obviously, I'm joking a little bit, but okay. So I think North Carolina finished 4th or something like that. So it's not likely to happen. Let me look though. Okay, so they finished 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They finished 8th in the ACC. I didn't know that. How did they get the Duke's Bowl? There should have been teams over them that got that. Interesting. Anyway, it's because they were 8-5, maybe. Not sure. Pitt's not going to be 8-5. I mean, it's a complete. There's no way. I don't even know what their schedule looks like the rest of the year. Pitt's, but let's look at it anyways, just for funsies. Because I know they haven't played a tough schedule yet. Every week I look, they've got somebody easy to play. They finally got a tough team this week in SMU. They've got at least 2 losable games down the stretch. 3. SMU, Clemson, Louisville. Boston College is a team that could have beat them earlier in the year. Virginia's got no shot. Eli Holstein's supposedly almost going to be out this week. We'll see what exactly happens there. But point being is, so North Carolina, we need to root for Pitt to somehow lose a couple games down the stretch, and maybe we can meet him in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. If Neal Brown could somehow beat Pitt in the Mayo Bowl, I'll accept it. That's the only way. Can everybody else agree with that? If somehow we could beat Pitt in the Duke's Mayo Bowl and avenge that loss, how cool would that be? There's no way you could fire him if he did that. Like I said, obviously just kidding around a bit here, but it's fun to think about anyways. But here's the basic truth of it all. If Neal Brown's coach next year, I'll figure out a way to be excited about it. I'll figure out a way to do it because that's how I'm built. And because I refuse to be miserable, I live for this. So I'm not going to live in misery and live in my own crap. I'm going to try to be solution oriented and just deal with it because acceptance is what it is. Acceptance. I don't have to say the serenity prayer all the time for no reason. The serenity prayer, accept the things you cannot change. Unfortunately, you have the courage to change the things you can and the wisdom to know the difference. Well, unfortunately for me, I can't change who West Virginia's coach is, and I have to accept whoever they do pick or don't. And I have the wisdom to understand that I know the difference between what those things are and how to act accordingly. So I want Neal Brown gone, but I understand I have very little impact on that. That's basically where I'm at with it. So I'm going to support the team in the short term because I love those players, and then we'll see what happens from there. Will we lose Nico? Somebody's asking us, will we lose Nico? Brown gets fired. I think yeah. I think we probably would, just because you can't guarantee the next coach would want him. I mean, maybe they would, and maybe he would stay if they talk to him. A lot of times that happens, but I would say his family, Nico's family, would probably, I don't know this to be fact, and I've only spoken to his dad a couple times, but I would say they would probably want to move on from the situation, being that he's put himself in position to start next year. And if that happened, he would be back to square one and probably have to be in a quarterback battle. So you go into the portal and you just kind of go to whoever wants you and who guarantees you that starting spot. And he would have suitors, maybe a group of 5 with what he's put on the field on tape. But if he starts the rest of this year and wins a few games, that changes. You just never know. He could finish the rest of the year on a hot streak, and the next coach would beg him to stay. There's too many ways they could go. But I do think that you would have to mark that for likely to leave. Everybody. And look, in the portal era, in the beginning, I got hung up on players bad. You can't get hung up on who stays and who goes if you get a new coach. Look at what Sonny Dykes did in his first year at TCU. They played in the national championship game, right? Look where Deion's at in year 2 at Colorado. They're 6-2. Look at Indiana in year 1. They've got a shot to make the college football playoff at Indiana. Nico, while I love Nico, and I would love to see Nico thrive at West Virginia, at the end of the day, we could thrive with another quarterback. It just as well. So, as long as somebody's here that wins, and they wear the state of West Virginia on their helmet and they'll have the words on their chest, I'm pretty much happy with that. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But just to recap before we get off here, Garrett Greene obviously has a concussion. I never said he was done. I said there are rumors that he could be. Because he's dealing with a concussion. Concussions are very unpredictable, especially when you've had multiple, and the word is that he's had multiple. And then obviously we just went over a couple of defensive coordinators, just to kind of chat, have fun talking about some dream candidates, a couple realistic ones. And then we kind of discussed the Neal Brown situation alongside of some other things with Nico. So that's kind of been the show today. A little bit more casual today, not as fiery as some of the other ones. There are 8 billboards saying keep Neal Brown in Motown. Did somebody put these up? Somebody answer that question for me. Did somebody put billboards up saying keep Neal Brown? That would be interesting. Somebody's commenting that. I'll check on that. If they did, I'll look into doing an episode on it. Thank you guys so much for this episode of Locked On West Virginia. Before we go, I should tell you, by the way, thank you for making Locked On West Virginia your first listen of every day. If you could, make Locked On Big 12 your second listen, guys. Please. Drake Toll leads the conversation in all things Big 12, as we know. So keep sticking around just for him. Other than that, guys, it's me. I'll be back later or tomorrow, depending on the news cycle. This is Locked On West Virginia, and I'm out.